Hello everybody and welcome to me feeling quite old, because today, or the day this video is going out, marks the 10th anniversary of the release of Gran Turismo 5, which of course is a very important game in the Gran Turismo series. For some it was the last of a golden age of GT games, but for others it was the beginning of the end, and what some people perceive as the demise of the Gran Turismo franchise. But we're going to talk about all of that. So this is Gran Turismo 5 10 years later. So yes, I've just picked up Gran Turismo 5 and a PS3 for the first time in about 4 years, and after predominantly playing GT Sport for a while now, there are certain ways that this game does feel very dated, but considering it is now a decade old, I think overall GT5 does still hold up pretty well in most aspects, and perhaps most notably and importantly, the physics. No, they're not as detailed as they were before, but they're still pretty damn good. They're accurate, despite the vast array of cars on offer. Most of them do feel different and have their own identities, and they're just fun to drive, and as Gran Turismo pretty much always has, it strikes that very good balance between realism and accessible fun. But if you've played this game before, you doubtless already knew that, and that's not one of the things that is commonly disputed about this game. But going back to my comment earlier about there being a vast array of cars, yes, there's over 1,000 cars in this game, but most of those, of course, are the standard models, which were carried over PS2 assets, which divided opinion. Of course, Gran Turismo has always had that edge of being about more than racing. It's about an educational experience almost, learning about cars, driving cars that you haven't seen or heard about before, and just collecting them in general. Even in 2010, this was a controversial move because even back then, those PS2 cars, which do make up about 3/4 of the list itself, don't look very good, and they still don't. But I was back then on the side of those cars. I was happy to have them there because they boosted the car list, and of course it kept that Gran Turismo feel. And it's for that reason that to this day I'm still on the side of those cars being there. I'm happy that they are included, although with that being said, in 2020 I am a bit more distracted by the jagged edges, the lack of interiors, and the low resolution number plates, etc, etc. And it must be said, even back then I understand why it was a controversial move on Polyphony's part, especially when you consider things like the damage as well. On the premium cars, the damage is actually very good. It was the first time it's been included in the Gran Turismo franchise, and it's also the best it's ever been. In Gran Turismo 6 and Sport, it's nowhere near as good as it is in GT5, but that is only with those premium cars. But those premium cars and the damage model, I think, is one of the big ways that the franchise evolved on from Gran Turismo 4. Yes, these things were overdue, unarguably, but we all know the story of this game's very difficult gestation. Of course, there were other new additions that hadn't been seen in Gran Turismo 4 and the previous games, like the NASCAR and the karting. Of course, the karting is carried on to this day, and I'm sure it'll be in Gran Turismo 7. But my point is, with its career mode structure as well, which we'll get into in a minute, Gran Turismo 5 does feel like that past, present, and future form of Gran Turismo that's kind of become the tagline from Kaz, as it were, for GT7. Because, as I said in the intro, a lot of people view this game as the last great or true Gran Turismo game, and with good reason. It had classic elements that we all love from GT4, like the used car dealership. It had a better career mode structure, which definitely took less of a precedent in GT6 and definitely Sport. At the same time, the career wasn't as expansive as GT4, the license tests weren't as hard, and you could tell the slight deviations from the past of the franchise, but I'm not too bothered about that. The career mode is still very strong, the special events add some extra spice to it, and the endurance races are still there, which was one of those big achievements if you completed it back in the day. Like pretty much every other Gran Turismo game, there was definitely enough here that you could sink your teeth into and spend a lot of time on. No, especially in terms of career mode, but I suppose as a game in general, GT5 doesn't reach the heights of GT4, which by many is regarded as one of the best, if not the best racing game of all time, let alone in the Gran Turismo franchise. It still stands pretty strong by itself, I'd say. I'm currently really enjoying my time playing through this game again, earning those trophies, and using the B-Spec mode, which is of course something that is absent for GT Sport and unconfirmed for GT7. I'm going to talk about the future a little more later, but I'm having a lot of fun. B-Spec Bob at the moment is a little bit dopey, but we'll get him trained up and things will start running a lot smoother soon. But despite that, and some of the other frustrations that can arise, I still love GT5, warts and all, and I can't wait to play through more of it. And there may be more GT5 related videos on the channel in the coming months, so stay tuned. I do have a few technical things to sort out, but rest assured they will be sorted out. Now, to talk about the future of the franchise, of course GT Sport was a departure in name as well as nature, of course, but GT7 is purporting to be another big, expansive Gran Turismo game like GT5 and more notably GT4, I'd say. I think that's the game that it's nodding to the most, of course with the map menu design and the promise of a fully fleshed out single player campaign mode. But what I wanted to talk about briefly was, can they fulfill the promise? Because just like GT5, there is a lot resting on the shoulders of GT7. A lot of people were dissatisfied with sport, and with this new tech and added complications, will we be able to get a game as expansive in scope and that can keep you entertained for as long as a game like GT4 or even GT5? Because the career mode standards have slipped. The AI in Gran Turismo 5 are better than they are in sport, and there's certainly a lot of work to be done in that regard if 7 really wants to advance the future of the franchise. Of course, the used car dealership is returning, as well as some of those classic circuits, although, as we've seen with Trial Mountain, the GT Sport FIA influence is still very much there with the, let's call it, modifications to the track. I am a bit worried about what's going to happen to some of the other original circuits, which will also be coming back. Grand Valley is very likely to come back, Deep Forest of course, Tokyo R246, I think that one's safe, but you catch my drift. A lot of these Gran Turismo original circuits, as Kaz has said in the past, will have to be modified for scale. And yes, earlier I was being polite by calling it modifications to Trial Mountain because I don't want to be a bit dramatic, but it seems like they've ruined the track. It looks far too wide. Of course, I haven't driven it yet, so I may be proved wrong, but from the looks of things, I'm not really a fan. But I'm glad that we do have Trial Mountain, at least in name, and of course we'll be getting other original circuits. The used car dealership is also going to be returning, and that's one of the things I'm most curious about after how strong the career mode's going to be, because they'd have to really build on the, 330 odd car list of GT Sport for the used car dealership to be worth it, in my opinion. Now, of course it may take on a different form and not be the same as it was, where you have a rotating batch of cars that you don't see in the regular dealerships. They might change that format to accommodate for less cars, because for the people expecting 1,000 cars in GT7, just calm your expectations, okay? I'm expecting about 450 to 500, and then that to be built upon with updates, which will kind of take the form of GT Sports update, where the car will just be added in as and when they're ready. So yeah, maybe the used car dealership will just have cheaper versions of cars with added miles where you'll have to go in and get the oil changes, because of course GT Auto is coming back, so hopefully that's going to be a part of that. Of course, oil changes are not confirmed, but that seems like the kind of thing that would be in GT Auto. I'm happy that the upgrades are coming, because they were completely absent in GT Sport, which was a little bit ridiculous with a game that is a bit more sim focused and wants you to focus in on your driving and tuning of the car. To have just a slider to adjust your power and weight, it seems a bit arbitrary and was a very questionable decision. And it also remains to be seen whether visual customization like splitters and spoilers, body kits, etc. will be coming back. I'm a bit on the fence on that one. Of course, the livery editor is there, so if we can have the livery editor coupled with body parts, that would be great for people to really customize their cars and make them look exactly how they want. But as I said, there's a lot we don't know about GT7, and there's also a lot of expectation riding on its shoulders, so we'll see if it can live up to the hype and be another one of those great GT games like GT5 was, if you ask me. But let me know what you think about GT5. Have you played it recently, or what did you think of it all the way back then? And your expectations for the future of the franchise. Let me know it all. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.